legally in a legal form, but at the same time, which is becoming increasingly important to us, is to try and get this debate out into the public forum, to try and make people understand what's at stake here and what the ramifications are if this is not something that's dealt with and sort of guided into some sort of, with some sort of parameters that makes the artists, the service providers, and the fans out there happy.
That was the moment that ushered in like the digital era of music. You know, Napster was this big scary beast changing and threatening the record industry, saying, okay, people can now get music for free.
That was the greatest thing that ever happened to me because I did not know what Napster was before that. And then I was like, holy shit, there's all, and I already had the Metallica albums, right? So I didn't need to re-download those. And suddenly there was a world of music at my fingertips.
Metallica versus Napster, 20 years later. What can I say, like, you know, Metallica sued Napster, they put him out of business, and, you know, it's crazy music stories that you hear, and it's 20 years later, you know, it's still being talked about, and I don't know, it's those crazy music stories that you hear. Yeah, it's yeah.
Some bands had to stand up for their copyright. And on the hip hop side, it was Dr. Dre, and on the metal side, on the rock side, it was Metallica. And they went after Napster, which was a startup at the time trying to legitimize what they were doing. And they sued them and they won.
Popular internet sites for downloading music. A federal court ruled Monday Napster must stop allowing music fans to swap copyrighted material.
On one hand, it's an artist, you know, trying to make their money from what they think is their labor and, you know, their work, and they felt like it was being stolen from them. On the other hand, it kind of made the biggest metal band in the world look very spoiled.
When I was a teenager and the lawsuit happened between Metallica and Napster got shut down, I still bought all my favourite bands and artists in the record stores, but I also had to move on to other streaming sites to get to download, you know, download from the internet other songs and bands' albums. So yeah, it changed. Like Napster and Metallica changed the world, kind of with streaming, especially Napster, yeah, and they changed the world with downloading and streaming. I think, yeah, that's definitely a fact. That's a fact, Jack.
Well, that made Lars Ulrich look horrible forever. I feel like people still don't forgive him for it.
The rest of the band, I don't think, really took any heat from it. It was just people are like, Lars, well, we all know he was kind of a dick.
I think we got a lot of laughs out of it, simply based on the cartoons and everything.
Unless you download it until it sleeps from Napster. Then you're going to motherfucking jail. You're motherfucking meat. You'll be some fat, greasy, tattooed bastard's buttery cornhole. Who do you think you are? I mean, just, you know, because you, like, made us rich, you think you can get free stuff? Songs that we spent upwards of, you know, like 24 to 48 hours writing and recording? I mean, James blew up for you. He ignited into a fiery inferno for you people. Fire bad! Fire bad!
Even today, you know, I post a picture of Lars and me at the Apollo Theater after a badass interview, and the comments are still, fuck you, Lars, and fucking Nap, you know, it still comes up.
You know, he heard this stuff they were coming up with, gearing up for Saint Anger, and he's like, wow, we're about to make a really shitty record. We should try to cover our ass and sue Napster now before we put out this big giant piece of shit.
Bobby, some crazy roadies just stole my car.
Not the Pinto!
Napster. Sharing's only fun when it's not your stuff.
And one of the really interesting things is that,
and being in a band myself and being an artist, I get what Metallica were at, because they didn't want their stuff being sold and put out there freely, for free, and I get why they sued Napster. It's kind of understanding, and it's kind of reasonable, but it's a two-way system, like, you know. It's kind of, you know, they didn't help their fans, they looked a bit crap for their fans, and yeah, but they did it for themselves, I guess. Yeah, you know.
Metallica had a song called I Disappear, which was supposed to be on the Mission Impossible soundtrack, and the song was not properly mixed. I guess it was an early version of the song, and before they were even done with like finishing it, a leak of a pre-mixed version of the song ended up on radio.
So it sort of showed up on all these radio stations across the country, and we were like, well, how did that happen? And I got a call from our office like the next day. It traces back to something called Napster, and we were like, well, if they're fuck with us, we'll fuck with them. And then it sort of turned into it started off a street fight, and then like a month later, it was like, whoa, okay, look at this.
They felt that this was a breach, really, of them as an artist being able to kind of control their content, how it's released, how it's promoted, and I think that's actually super legitimate.
I don't really see anything wrong with what Metallica did back then. In fact, the way I see it, it might have been, the biggest band in the world who really had no reason to worry about money, was simply fighting for the rights of, metal bands that were less fortunate.
So yeah, it's 20 years later, and I think in another 20 years we'll be still talking about it. But today, people and artists are getting paid to put their music on streaming sites, and that's great. That goes back to Napster and the other band, Metallica, I think. Yeah, and the war they had, yeah. That little fussle or kerfuffle that they had back in the day. So yeah, and that helped all the other bands and artists out there today. So it's good, like, worked out well, I guess.
And they were.
I wasn't shocked by it. I wasn't pissed at Metallica for them doing that. I thought they had valid reasons, and now we all years later see that they were very validated in what they were saying at that time.
Well, it is interesting if you look back on it, because with anything, the result is a combination of many factors on different ends of the spectrum, and usually what you end up with is somewhere in the middle, right? It's a compromise. So in some respects, maybe what we have now with Pandora and Spotify and RDO and services like that, where you can kind of stream all you want, with artists actually getting paid for it, is in some way a result of Lars Ulrich and other people who fought for the rights of musicians fighting against that, rebelling against Napster.